Welcome back. Well, we've reached it. The last part of our story, the part where our main character, our protagonist May, is going to make her own ending. But it won't be the end, because after we're finished reading and talking about it a little bit, we're going to be joined by the author herself. Carolyn Starr Rose will be joining us for an author talk. So before we get started with this last little bit, I'm wondering if you've given some thought to what kind of ending Maybe will make. You know, what's going to happen? She's still kind of stuck. The blizzard is still continuing, but she is determined. What can she do, though, with a wolf just outside her door and very, very snowy conditions, and in her weakened state, and still not knowing how to get home any more than she did those other times? What are her options? And she doesn't know, really, does she, what day it is? What's the date? So it could almost be Christmas. For all she knows, Pa could come up and she could hear a noise outside the door, and it won't be a wolf, it'll be your own dad. Wouldn't that be a terrific ending? So all I know is I want Maybe to figure out a way to get herself out of this situation. Let's see what she does. I tuck a finger inside my reader and reach for the basket of hay twists. There are 3 left. I need a plan. I hold my bundled hands against the stove door, taking every last bit of heat before I leave the rocker. My feet are small enough to wear 3 sets of stockings, even if one boot doesn't button properly over the ankle I twisted months ago. I pocket the last 2 biscuits. They will need to last me. Pa's coming, but I don't know when. I shove the broom handle up into the icy hole beyond the door, again and again, until my shoulders burn. Nothing changes. Maybe if I took a spoon, put it in the stove, wrapped the handle in a bit of cloth, I could slowly dig my way out. That wolf is somewhere out there. I burn myself through cloth and stockings. The spoon's heat is drawn almost instantly once it touches the snow. What melts drips down my sleeves. I return to the stove, heat the spoon, scrape, 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 until I formed a hole deep enough to try the broom handle again. And though I thrust the handle with all I have left, the snow ceiling still doesn't budge. Maybe it is senseless digging out. I am 15 miles from home, a distance a body could cover in one day if nourished and warm and familiar with the way. I might as well set out for the Pacific. It's so big. I reckon it would be easier to find. My cropped hair falls across my face. Senseless or not, I will do what I have to, what is right, this moment, for me. How long do I heat the spoon, pick at the snow, swing the broom handle? I'm shouting like the wall will listen. Stupid blizzard! Danged ice! My hands blister beneath their layers. The hole is big as my head. How deep is this snow? I've been so careful not to waste the candles, but that time is over now. There are 2 left, almost stubs. I light one, hold it in the snow hole. Water drips and the candle sputters out. I light the second one and set it on the table. then touch them wick to wick. Every time the flame goes out, I light my candle and hold it to the snow again. It is hard to tell what is sun, what is candle, what is pure hope. The sound of the broomstick against the snow is less like a drum. This is the soft thump of kneading bread. I swing the handle faster and harder with a power that has waited until now. Suddenly, the broom handle sticks and I must yank it loose. Snow tumbles down, blessing me like a downpour on parched fields. The sky is blue. I slip into my coat, pack my suitcase, then straighten the sari before I go. If Mr. Oblinger does return someday, I want him to find things in their proper places. The bench, tucked under the table, the rocker angled properly. There's nothing I can do with the dirty bean pot except fill it with fresh snow. I leave one quilt folded over the back of the rocker. The other will offer some protection outside. I cling to the lower lip of the hole with one hand and dig the toe of my boot into the snow wall, heaving the quilt, then the pillowcase up and out, and last of all, the broom. The sun is low in the east, the sky is clear. I begin. I walk toward the morning sun, glancing over my shoulder at the mound of snow that is the sadi. Soon, it is impossible to say what is house and what is prairie. There's no creek to guide me. Nothing is familiar, but I push forward still. Ma's dainty boots don't make walking easy, but I am grateful for their cover. Ice slips into the place I left unbuttoned, and I tug one sock and try to fasten a few buttons more. There, just to my right, paw prints in the snow. He's still out here. Was he separated from his pack? Is he the weak one? Has he eaten since the storm? I secure the pillowcase with the bodice of the red dress, the quilts folded over my coat, wrapped from shoulders to elbows, my threadbare armor. I grip the broom handle in both hands, ready. The sun is higher now in the eastern sky. A horse and sleigh have been through recently. I'm unsure where these tracks came from or where they lead, but I can tell someone's traveled in two directions, has doubled back. I stay with the sleigh tracks until they turn north, away from home. I could follow, try to catch up, but I won't. I'm going home. It's dangerous, but it's what I've chosen, and I gather strength from knowing this. I lift each boot just to plunge it deep into the snow again, a high step march that hardly travels forward. The broom handle is my cane. My forehead burns. My chemise, drenched with sweat, is a frigid layer against my skin. And no matter how much snow I suck, my stomach isn't tricked. Wolf, show your face. This would be an easy fight for you. When the sun is behind me, I rest for a bit. The quilt is both my shawl and cushion. Even though I've traveled since just after daybreak, I feel no closer to my home, and I can't possibly know exactly where home is. The quilt is soaked through, but I'm not yet ready to start again. The western horizon, both blue and white, is so bright it's hard to look at long. The only tracks I see are my own. I rock for warmth, pulling the quilt about me like a hood. What if this is the end? What if I've fought my way from that prison for nothing, just to die out here? Tears freeze to my eyelashes as I stumble to my feet, which are weighty as sacks of flour. My legs are wet from stockings to bloomers. My shadow extends long before me. If I'm not home soon, I will not last the night. Finally, I turn, face the western sky, and watch the sun sink lower, lower. It is gone. I must move while there's still light. I stamp my feet to rouse them. Pain shoots through my toes. Promise I'm still living. I trudge toward the purple darkness and turn sometimes to see if the sunlight has taken pity on me, if it might wait to see me home. But it is well beyond that imaginary place where the sky meets land. The only light, just a memory of this day. Do I see or hear it first? The shadow where the sun once was? Distant bells? The unsure step of a horse's hooves battling the snow? Someone is there. I'm certain now. I try to run, trip on Mrs. Oblinger's quilt, crash to the ground, but I am up again. Hello! Hello! My voice is firm, like I've used it every day. I flap my arms, and the quilt unfurls. Now the sleigh bells ring clearly. Over here, I say. A sleigh is steering toward me. The horse slows, then stops. May Betterly? I'm May, I say, and reach forward. A firm hand grasps my wrist. Miss Betterly, the stranger says, are you all right? I've seen nothing move for so long, save grass pushing at my feet, clouds, rabbits, this endless blowing snow. And this is a person. He settles me in his sleigh, pulls a buffalo robe around me. In the moonlight, I make out the man's blue muffler, a hat pushed low on his brow, his eyes. I have seen them before. I'm John Chapman, he says. I help Mr. Oblinger with his floor. The neighbor who brought the wood. If Ma could see me, she'd tell me to remember my manners. How do you do, Mr. Chapman? He nods at me. How do you do? I'm riding in a sleigh away from the Oblinger's soddy. We pass a clump of darkness, some trees I counted last July. The storm came the 1st of December, he says. I dug out last week, drove into town. That's when I heard. His eyes dart to me. Heard the Oblingers were gone. Seemed funny Oblinger would leave without telling me. I'd helped him some at his place. He'd done some work on mine. I asked if anyone knew where he was headed. Heard all sorts of stories, none of them the same. His wife had run. He'd given up and sold his land. He would come back with family next spring. Desperate to find the mistress. How easy it would be to forget me. Mr. Chapman turns. No one mentioned a girl. I got to thinking, if he'd run off like some folks said, and with those wolves about, what had become of you? Someone had thought of me. These last few days, someone knew. I came earlier this week to look for you, Mr. Chapman says. A couple of miles from my place, something along the creek caught my eye. I dug through the snow, reached the spokes of a wheel. Oblinger's wagon must have overturned, slid over the edge of the ravine. My heart claws at my throat. Remembering the way Mr. Oblinger raced, something had happened to him. Mr. Oblinger never made it to town? Did you see? Mr. Chapman shakes his head. I walked around, looked for more. He clears his throat. the wolves. There's nothing I can say. Rode faster then when I figured you were alone, but the snow blew through again. It was a wonder I made it home. I dug myself out this morning, tried again at the Oblingers this afternoon. When I reached the soddy, I found a hole, some footprints, and the house empty. Followed those prints until I found you. It was good of you, Mr. Chapman. Nothing more than any decent person would do. The horse labors in the snow. Still, we're moving faster than I ever did alone. I lay my head back against the robe's soft fur. I will see my family soon. My folks are just a few miles southeast of town, I say. His eyes are soft. It was foolish of you to try to make it on your own. Foolish and brave. Guess I'm the foolish type then. He laughs, but not unkindly. It is strange to hear this story. A man I'd barely met taking the time to try to save me. I ask, could you tell me the day? It's Friday, the 15th of December. Pa delivered me to the Oblingers 5 months ago. I listen, but don't talk much. There's too much to consider. I'm content to feel the wind at my cheeks, to take in the stars, scattered like marbles across the heavens, to watch the horses' sturdy legs step gingerly. Pa said he'd come just before Christmas, I hear myself saying. Mr. Chapman says, I must have just beat him. The air is sharp in my lungs. I'm dizzied from hunger or a lack of sleep or from the sweet strangeness of my circumstance. If I had waited just a few hours more, Mr. Chapman would have found me, still buried beneath the snow. But I didn't wait. I pulled myself out of that place and set to walking. I left a trail for Mr. Chapman to come to me. Even though the world has looked much the same since Mr. Chapman stopped for me, I know we're getting nearer. The land feels familiar, and then I see the gentle rise, a wisp of smoke escaping from the chimney. Stop! I shout, then remember myself. Please, stop. Pa dug out. As I'd imagined, the land between the house and barn is clear. I race toward the door and shove it open. Ma! Pa! Hiram! I call. Ma steps forward. May? Her confusion breaking into a smile. What are you doing here? I hug her, not yet ready to explain. Over her shoulder, I see Mr. Chapman at the barn, talking to Pa. Hiram rushes from the barn. May Betts! He yells, his face lighting with a grin. What happened to your hair? Suddenly, we're all together between the barn and Soddy. Pa folds me in his arms. You were alone, he whispers. I nod, soaking in the warmth of his overcoat. Ma's brought a mug of coffee and a square of cornbread, thick, delicious. The coffee burns as I gulp it down. She's a strong girl, Mr. Chapman says. Hiram's eyes meet mine. A girl who tries to cover 15 miles alone in the snow can handle just about anything. Pa clears his throat and squeezes me. Ma wraps her arms around the both of us. I close my eyes, lean on Pa's shoulder. In time, I'll tell about the wolf, the empty apple barrel, and the darkness. for now, I need no words. Later, after Mr. Chapman has bid us good night, Hiram holds out his hand. "Come with me," he says. He leads me to the rise where in the spring the wildflowers grow. We stand together, side by side. I don't know why sometimes reading works for me, but other times it doesn't. I don't know why holding something helps my words to form. Maybe I'll never understand exactly why I struggle. I am smart and capable, as Miss Sanders used to say. But tonight, in the stillness, I realize there's no shame in hoping for things that might seem out of reach. I will take the teaching examination when I'm old enough, and if I fail, I'll try again. You can keep your Christmas candy. I don't want it anymore. Hiram's eyes grow wide. You've seen it? I smile. Not yet. But just you wait. Even though I know my geography, even though I understand what is and isn't real, there's no reason to stop hoping that sometime I might find it, that distant place where the sun journeys and earth at last meets the sky. And that's it. That's the end of May's journey. And by saying journey, I don't mean the journey from home to the Oblingers. I don't even mean the journey from the Sadi back home. Some stories are driven by what we call the plot, the action, the actions that make up the story, one action after another after another. And that's what drives the story. That's particularly true, say, if it's a mystery. But some stories are character driven, and that is that the journey that goes on inside of the character is the more important part of the story, the most interesting part of the story. Those stories are called character driven stories. I'm a fan of character driven stories. This one is both, right? It's a series of actions, and we, are moved along by that action where the blizzard, the multiple trips to try to go home, the wolf outside the door, those are all actions and events in the plot. But then there's what goes on in May's heart and mind about how she sees herself, about the teacher, about classmates taunting her, her confusion about why she can't read, her determination to keep trying, her frustration when it doesn't work. But May has learned things about herself because of the things that happen in the story, because she's been stranded, because she has to survive, because she makes these accomplishments and finds this strength inside of herself. She learns something new about who she is, and that confidence that comes from that I can do anything. I am in charge of my own fate. I am in charge of my own destiny. I am calling the shots. I am making the decisions. She decides that nobody is going to tell her again who she is and who she isn't, or what she can or what she can't do. And so, at the very end, that's what we're left with. A maybe that's home, safe and sound, but more significantly, a maybe who is stronger and more determined. A maybe we know will write her own story and become whatever it is that she wants to be. I hope you've enjoyed this story, this journey. I know I have.